everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC. I'm your host, Phil Bakke, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Mika Burrell. Mika, I guess we're back? Question mark. Well, we're not back, but the podcast is certainly recording again.
Yeah, we took a little summer sabbatical for myriad reasons. Summer travels, not wanting to talk about the same thing every single week, or what have you. But yes, no, it's good to be back on the airwaves with you, Phil. How you doing?
Good. I'm feeling a little recharged after a little vacation. So yeah, I've been pleased to.
Yeah, you were a jet setter this summer, man.
July was crazy. It went quickly. So yeah, it was I guess I was in Milwaukee, then I was in Oakland, then we were in Florida with my family. So yeah, it was quite the summer, but fun stuff. So busy, but I can't complain.
Nice.
What about you? I know you're feeling under the weather recently, so feeling better.
Yes. I'm on the mend, man, and I'm sorry to the listeners if my dulcet tones aren't as good as they usually are. Yeah, man, getting corona in 2024 is embarrassing. We had reported a couple weeks ago that coronavirus went through the Locomotive locker room. Well, I guess it's just going through the nation because I guess there's like a summer surge or whatever. So yeah, it got your girl, but I'll be fine. This is like my third time having it, so yeah. Whatever. Antibodies, hopefully they'll fight them off. So, but no, yeah, I'm doing all right. I'm getting better. Just congested.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot to talk about, but for the listeners who, we don't often talk about what's going on behind the curtain, but we do, even if it is sparing at times or whatever, we do often have some outline of how we're going to discuss like what's been going on around the team. And I think many people who listen to the show will be used to our format of like, we review the last game, we sort of talk about what's going on, news of the club, and then we talk about the next game. We've tossed out the script. There is no outline. So we're not really sure where this is going to take us because, I mean, Mika, the reality around the team right now is that we're adrift. Like, comfortably the worst team in the league, in the Western Conference, I should say. We're not worse than Miami, but we are comfortably the worst team in the West. We are celebrating like a scoreless draw in Memphis. There's just the vibes around the team are just they're pretty rancid, and there's really no way around it.
Yeah, no, it's been an awful season. I think really the only consistent bright spot this season has been the performances of Jamali Waite.
Yeah.
In the Locomotive goal. He has been awesome for us, but other than that, like, we've seen glimpses of Lucas Stauffer, we've seen glimpses of what Javier Navarez can do. Armando Moreno, of course, when he's scoring goals, like, he looks like the player that we, expected we were buying, but it just hasn't clicked enough on a consistent basis to make any kind of serious threat towards the playoff places. I don't know if mathematically it's out of the question, but emotionally it certainly seems out of the question that we are going to make the playoffs this year. And that is, as we've said in more, previous difficult seasons, that's kind of like the bare minimum sporting achievement for a USL championship side. And especially one like us who we like to think of ourselves as ambitious. The club certainly tries to evoke that kind of mentality and image as an ambitious sporting endeavor. But yeah, no, the season has just been awful. I don't think there's any way around it. And I hinted to you, Phil, before we started recording that I had some diabolical notes here. So I'm just going to lay them out for you.
Okay.
Because since the last time we recorded, which was June 18th, so that was 6 games ago.
Yep.
Locomotive has scored 2 goals. We've allowed 11. We have as many red cards in that time as goals. Courtesy of Eric Calvillo and Javier Nevarez, who is now suspended for 3 games. But more on that later. We've lost 5 games. We've drawn 1, which was last time out against Memphis. Won none of those. And we've been shut out 4 times. Bright spot, Jamali Wade has been nominated for 2 saves of the week in that time. And won 1.
Oh my God. It's terrible. I mean, it's 2 goals. That's really
2 red cards.
2 goals, 2 red cards. I mean, yeah, and it doesn't get bad. It doesn't get better. It's like, you know, we've talked about like rough patches or like even rough months and stuff like that. I mean, it doesn't even get better when you zoom out across the whole season. We've scored 16 goals the whole year. We played 21 games. And we have 13 points. We actually only have 3 more goals than we have points in the season.
It's just bad. Like, there is no metric. I challenge anyone out there to find a metric that looks good for us right now, because I don't think there is one, except for, like, Jamali's individual stats.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, I did this as kind of like a thought exercise of like, okay, really, how bad has it been? And it's been bad.
It's been real bad.
And that's just the previous 6 games. You know, the whole season's been a shambles. And that's why it's been so hard, I think, for us to like get on the mic and talk, because it's like, what more can you really say, right? Yeah. And in the club's defense, they have given us a ton of news recently, so I mean, those are things we'll get into. But on the pitch, like, it's just the same thing every week, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it's been challenging as like content creators, quote unquote, to create content out of this, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I feel like you feel that too with the diehard fans. Like the enthusiasm just is at an extremely low ebb, and who can blame them?
Yeah, it's brutal. I mean, I think like we often think about it, you know, in doing this is a, you know, I hate to be so dramatic about it, but it is a labor of love. It's something that we do because we like it. We want to do it. We want to put this show out for the fans. And like, I'll tell you, when like rubber meets the road and it's like, man, do I really want to like get on and do a podcast about this? It really is tough when it feels like the organization cares less than you do. Like, and that's the sad reality. I'm not saying that individuals within the club are not working extremely hard to make the situation better. I'm sure that is happening, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not to dig anyone specific out. It's just to say that as an organization, Locomotive's like level of engagement, level of intensity around like, or even level of accountability about how dog shit this season has just been non-existent. Like, there's been nobody who's stood up and taken responsibility for how bad this has been. And when that happens, like, I think it's natural for fans and people like us, like, I mean, for us as fans, and like, in addition to making this show and all of that stuff, it can start to be really disheartening, because it's like, well, what is the direction here? Like, if we're just going to act like it's all fine, like I even, in looking up, we'll talk some news, in looking up those news articles on the club's website, it's like the headline, like when you go to the club's website, is fireworks. Hold on. What does it say? Fireworks headline Saturday night versus Miami.
Dog.
Fireworks.
Is it crack? Like, what are we doing?
We're not talking about a player. We can't talk about the game. It's literally, if you go to our club's website, it's like, please come to the game. There will be fireworks, which is crazy. Like, there is nothing to point to. There's nothing. And in addition, there's that lack of accountability, which I think just becomes extremely difficult when no one is really, like, in these tough times, like, for people around the club to become less visible, less engaged with the fans, like, more insulated, more sort of this, like, siege mentality. It just becomes extremely difficult to continue to give a shit. Like, because if it's like, hey, if you guys are kind of going within yourselves and you're just going to, like, slump to these, like, disappointing results game after game, then how on earth are we all supposed to, like, how are you expecting us to, like, get up for the next game? Like, if we just watch game after game of, like, of the same thing over and over and over again, it's just, it you know, and I know I'm being, like, a little bit harsh here, but it's like, it is the brutal truth that it's like, if you're expecting fans to come out and you're expecting people to continue to care, like, you gotta do something. Like, you gotta meet people halfway. And at a certain point, for a team that was very bullish about, like, their prospects as a competitor and as a contender for not just the playoffs, but, like, a deep playoff run and a potential championship this year, the lack of any acknowledgement of just how wrong it's gone, outside of sacking a coach, there's barely any statement from the club regarding that. It's like, it all kind of happened, and then it was just like, we moved on. Hey, we did the thing that is this is our accountability, and, like, we'll just hope it gets better, and it just hasn't. So I think, like, just not seeing more from the club to continue to engage the fans has been the biggest disappointment, because at the end of the day, like, bad seasons happen, off seasons happen, like, every single sporting organization goes through difficult times, but the good ones acknowledge what's going on and make a plan on how to get better. And I think the struggle right now, and where the fans and ourselves, where we as fans are feeling adrift, is it doesn't feel like there is much of a plan or much of a reaction to it being just as bad as it's been.
Yeah, and I mean, if there's any pattern that we can discern from any of the things that Locomotive have been doing since June, when Wilmer Cabrera came into the fold, is to sign Wilmer Cabrera players, right?
Yeah.
That's really, like, the only, like, pattern or any kind of semblance of, like, an idea of a plan that we can see.
Yeah.
And that, unfortunately, that has yet to bear fruit. Obviously, players that have just come in, like, we have to give them a chance to see what they can do, but the change needed to be more immediate, and that just hasn't been the case. And that's for myriad reasons, right? I mean, there's been injuries, but everyone deals with those. There's been suspensions. Some of that is our own doing. COVID, that didn't help when that hit the locker room before Phoenix. So yeah, there are forces working against this club, and I will concede that.
Sure.
But at the same time, like, the things that we can control, we aren't doing that well enough. And that's what we do for 90 minutes on the pitch every weekend. So yeah, no, I don't think you're being harsh. I think you're being realistic and just calling it like you see it. And I mean, the fireworks thing, like, it's obviously like a meme at this point, right? Like, fireworks at Locomotive, ooh. But yeah, like, that's the way to get, like, casual butts in seats, right? Like, family night out, whatever, group events. And that's all fine and dandy, but, like, was it after the derby? We posted that, just an open question to our followers, like, how many people feel like they don't want to come to the games anymore.
Yeah.
And it was quite a lot. And a lot of people saying, I don't want to renew my season tickets. And that's like a $2,000 investment or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
They're not cheap, right? So yes, the casuals are the ones that are really like the financial lifeblood of the club, but you do want to keep some of those like people who are like legitimately invested, right?
Yeah.
So I find that trend troubling.
Yeah, I agree. I would say between what's gone on the field, I mean, we even talk about, and I don't know that we'll spend much time talking about the Memphis game. I just like want to point out that it's like, a positive result in that it is a point gained in a sea of terrible results. But we also are basically one Jamali Waite away from losing this game heavily. Like there was positive signs like in the game, but certainly Memphis had some very, very big moments. And if it weren't for Jamali Waite, this would have been another like shelling. Just another like absolute it easily could have ended 3-0. And I think there are a couple of moments for Locomotive, but nothing super dangerous. And that's just sort of, if we had won, it would have been a smash and grab and a bit like undeserved or less deserved, I'll say. Because it would have been because Jamali Waite stood on his head, which has been unfortunately like the story of much of the season. So, but you mentioned the moves and things that are starting to take shape here in terms like there has been quite a bit of news around the club, and you talked about the signing of guys that Wilmer Cabrera is familiar with, and we got a bit of news today on that front as Wahab Ackwei joined via transfer from Colorado Springs Switchbacks. And in a corresponding transaction, El Paso Locomotive transferred forward Justin Dhillon to Colorado Springs. So Ackwei, he's 27. He joined the Switchbacks during the offseason. He's made 5 appearances for them in the championship. But prior to that, played for Wilmer at RGV. And it was there that he made like the bulk of his professional appearances. Like his history is basically as a professional is primarily at RGV in terms of the bulk of his time on the pitch. So what'd you make of this move? I mean, the reality is like for a team that's only scored 16 goals this season, it has to be classed as a pretty bold move to transfer the guy who scored the second most goals on the team.
Yeah, and second most goal involvements, I think, too. I think Justin had a couple assists.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's on paper, it doesn't really fill me with much confidence that this is like an even exchange. I think Colorado Springs are getting a guy with big capability, big ability. Maybe didn't show it quite as consistently in El Paso, and that's of course for several different reasons. Justin was just rehabbing from an injury when this transfer happened. But yeah, I mean, in a team where the attack is already so anemic, to give up on a striker like that, I just feel is really strange. At the same time, though, I mean, Justin Dhillon seems to really like divide opinion, because there's a lot of people that are like, good, get this bum out, or like he was such a flop, which I find really interesting. And I think of course people are entitled to their opinions, but I'm wondering, did you think Justin Dhillon was a flop?
I think it's hard to look at any player that joined this offseason and say that they were a flop, given that you'd have to essentially apply that label to every single attacker that joined the club this offseason, maybe minus Moreno. Like, so Joaquin Rivas hasn't lived up to like the goal scoring expectations. Dhillon, I think we talked openly about the fact that like, hey, it feels like at times he's a little bit wasteful, but he does like a ton of work, and they're asking him to do a ton of work in the system the way it was being played, because we were basically, I mean, if many will remember, for the first three quarters of the games that we've played so far, it was lump the ball up to Dhillon and hope that he could get other people involved in the play. Like that was our buildup for much of the beginning of the season. Moshe Bane like hasn't hit the ground running. You know, he hasn't like lit up the world in terms of his like him getting involved in goals. Obviously, you know, Ricardo Zacharias hasn't seen the field as much, but he hasn't been able to like light that same spark that he did at times last season. I think like when that many players, when you're like flop, 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 it's like, hold up. Maybe the situation at the club is more so the issue. Because like, what outfield player are we pointing to? I mean, aside from maybe Lucas Stauffer, especially early in the season, but like, are we pointing to many outfield players and saying like, man, they just were like, what a signing. They've been amazing. It's like, no, everybody's been kind of ass. And like, but I don't think it's because they're bad players. Like, and that's why I want to like really emphasize that. I don't think anybody at the club right now is just bad, right? Like, I think they are all very good footballers playing in a completely broken and dysfunctional team. Like, and how, whoever you want to attribute that to, Claire Hout, the overall organization, Cabrera, like whoever's door you want to place that at, like that's on you. But like, I don't know that we can call a player a flop when everybody this season has been so poor.
Yeah, and I totally get that. I think the difference maybe with Justin Dhillon was just the expectations on him, as opposed to whatever Zacharias, maybe a Rivas, because maybe we weren't familiar with his game coming from the Eastern Conference. But Dhillon, we know, had been tearing it up in our conference, so maybe that had something to do with it. But no, you're absolutely right. Nobody's really shown consistently. For me, though, like I don't like this move. I think for such an anemic attack to then give up that many goal contributions, while not many, still more than most, is kind of strange for a center back who hasn't played much this season. And the reason given, or that we've heard for the transfer, is that Justin didn't fit the tactical setup that Wilmer Cabrera is looking to instill. And I also find that a little bit disheartening, because Wilmer came on this show in June and said that he would adapt to the players that he had. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that in any kind of disrespectful way. I'm just putting it out there. Like, that is what he said. And so to move on a player like this without a full season just feels a little bit harsh to me. Yeah. But who knows? Maybe Dhillon wanted the move as well. Maybe he felt that he wasn't fitting in or contributing as much as he would like. I'm almost certain he felt that way, because I know that he's a consummate pro and knows that he could be playing better. So yeah, it's just a weird one for me. But obviously, Wahab, like I obviously hope he does really well.
Yeah.
I mean, we have like defenders for days now, so it's actually not an area of concern like it once was. But again, in a team that can't score goals, like, are we going to play a back eight? Like, I'm not understanding. I'm not seeing the vision quite yet. It doesn't mean it's not there. I'm just not seeing it. Sure.
No, I think that's completely fair. I mean, when we talk about a team that scored 16 goals in 21 games so far this season, we've conceded 32, which, granted, not good enough, right? Like, we've conceded 32, but there are
literally double.
Yeah. And there are a handful of teams that are a lot higher in the standings than we are that have conceded 32 goals, like, or even 30, right? Which is not great, but they're scoring goals, which is the difference. Like, so this team in its current composition, and with, I almost think of it as like, we've gotten to the point where this is a simple addition problem. And I talked about this on our live stream with like, or not a simple addition problem, but it is a matter of mathematics now, of like, we only have 13 points and there's only like 13 games to go in the season. We cannot draw our way out of last place, right? Like, we have to start winning some games. And the only way we can do that is if we start scoring more than we've been scoring. And a bunch of clean sheets might get us a couple of 1-0s, might get us a couple, but like, clean sheets in USL Championship are hard to come by anyways. And the way this team has played, like, I don't trust them to get clean sheets. The only way, like, I hate to say it, but like, Hutch, are you there? Because I need some 3-2s, some 4-3s. I'm kidding mostly, but I mean, yeah. For those who don't know, John Hutchinson also the interim manager for Yokohama F Marinos at the moment. So,
they're like a literal powerhouse in Asia.
Asian Champions League finalists. So,
insane.
Yeah. Anyways, but no, I think like, if the thought is, hey, we just need to shore things up at the back, it's like, hey, no, like, at some point we got to start turning the screw on teams. And I mean, I just can't think of the last time. And maybe it's because we've only scored 2 goals over the last 6 games. Maybe it's recency bias, but I feel this whole season we haven't had an attack that has scared anybody. And I mean that in a sense that, like, we have plenty of players who should scare defenses. Amano Moreno on his own should scare defenses. But I don't think anybody is scared because the way that we build up is so easy to nullify. And like, we get so sort of caught in this pattern of lumping it long and just like, and we get kind of scared, I think, of playing with the ball, and it just doesn't unsettle anybody, which is crazy to say. And I don't think that's a personnel issue. I think it's the way the team's been playing this season.
Yeah, no, you're right. I don't think anyone, well, certainly nobody comes to Southwest University Park fearing us. I mean, we've gone over this so many times of how our home form is absolutely tragic. And that has showed no signs of improving.
Do we have do we have a win? We still don't have a win at home this year, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah, because our last win was, when was that? Our last win was the 1-0 in San Antonio
in June.
On June 5th.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We still haven't won at home. It's August. We haven't won a game at home this whole season.
Crazy. Again, and home games are where the team makes money.
Yeah.
And this team, from what we're hearing, is already in the red. So it's like,
yeah, it's
just not good. Like, none of it is good. None of it is okay.
A good trivia bit to know for the future is going to be that this Locomotive team beat Charleston in Charleston.
Dog, that was when Wilmer was at the wheel. Like, we were hype.
We were,
which,
turning
to
the
be
whole
fair,
season
was
around.
like, it was an amazing, like, feat.
Oh, it was great.
Yeah,
we felt one speck of joy, and that was it. That's all you get.
Yeah. It's
the other news that came through that I did want to mention on the player acquisition front is that Locomotive did the old whatever Bravos Do-si-do and and brought over 2 loanees. So Arturo Ortiz, who many probably remember actually from his time at Pumas, and I think they won a league title during his time there, if I'm not mistaken. And then Amari Escoto, the other player, joining. So Ortiz, a center back. So sort of in the same vein, Mika, you mentioned the fact that we're now very flush with center back depth between Ackwei and Ortiz. Escoto,
and we even signed that German lad.
Oh yeah, Dennis Erdman as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, another Colorado Springs player. So we've been shopping out in the foothills of the Rockies, but Amari Escoto joins forward. He's played for a lot of teams in Mexico, but the 31-year-old joins having just about 320 odd Liga MX and Ascenso appearances, throwing some Leagues Cup in there as well, and 70 goals and 10 assists to his name. So not the most prodigious scorer, but well-traveled. And I guess if you look at the Juarez loanees, Escoto and Ortiz at 31 years old, both at 31 years old, feel a bit more closer to Borelli, Carijo type loans versus not to put Escoto on the same level as Leandro, because I'm sure Christian would have my head for that, but more experienced loanees than obviously like Navarez and Palua felt like more developmental loanees, where this feels like a chance to get a little bit more experience in the team.
Yeah, I mean, 31 years old, been around the block, played, at the highest level in Mexico, so hopefully he can contribute quickly, because that's what we need, right? We need results now, not like soon. Like, we need results now, just to keep some kind of like pride about this season. Because again, I don't know if the playoffs are even a thing, but yeah, Escoto is kind of an interesting one, because like just looking at some of his like stats and things like that, I don't know exactly, and full disclosure, I've never watched the man play. But just from the numbers, like, it doesn't seem like he profiles like in any like specific way necessarily. He's not the tallest, so not like super dominant. I mean, not bad in the air, but not like dominant, right? Not
Sure.
like a straight up like kind of like Justin Dhillon type player.
Yeah.
But looks like he can bring others into the play. Again, the experience is the thing that I think really matters. And it was important, I guess, to really like find a replacement immediately for Justin Dhillon, because again, like second most goal involvements on the team, like you have to replace that somehow. And obviously Amando Moreno, I think Amando Moreno operates better playing off someone than like necessarily leading the line. So hopefully Escoto and him can develop some kind of chemistry.
Yeah, and I think we saw, we obviously saw the first appearance off the bench from Andy Cabrera as well. So, in Memphis, and he did. I think it's fair to admit that despite the fact that he doesn't, end up making a difference in terms of the score, there did seem to be a spark, like in Locomotive's attack that we maybe haven't seen as much this year after he came into the match.
Yeah, no, to be fair to the new signing, yeah, I thought he did look bright, constantly showing for the ball, which I liked, because I think that there's definitely been some people hiding from the ball in this team this season. So that was a breath of fresh air. But obviously he just couldn't make an impact immediately. And I think, it would have been kind of tough to expect that from the kid. I mean, having just come back to North America to play and getting to grips with a new team. Obviously, being coached by his dad, like, that's not new. But, yeah, I thought that he looked bright and could offer something. He's a lot, like, bigger than I remember. And I know it's been a couple years, so obviously. But he's definitely, like, filled out. Mm-hmm. So he could be a force on the wing for us, and kind of like give a little bit of balance and ask different questions than a slight pacey Amando Moreno does. So yeah, I'm hoping that Danny can take the next step in his playing career with Locomotive, and yeah, show the Locomotive faithful why his dad has so much faith in him and recruited him to the team.
I guess interesting, the one interesting thing in terms of roster construction is probably, well, it's probably the lack of signing a midfielder despite the like outs that occurred, and obviously we've had some like injury stuff and got ourselves in some suspension trouble as well, like at different points. So obviously it seems like Bolu is back, and he'll still be involved, but it's kind of him and Calvillo, and then kind of piecing things together in midfield otherwise. Where I guess Robert Coronado was the one maybe addition that is ostensibly like in midfield at the moment.
Yeah, and he also, I think, against Memphis was decent.
Yeah.
Sometimes a little loose with the ball, but also I think trying to make things happen.
Sure.
And again, I think is he the one that we paid a transfer fee for? So
yeah, to Central Valley Fuego.
Yeah, so I think we'd be within our rights to expect something for that, right? So
sure.
Our Emre Can, as it were.
Yeah.
If you were on the stream, if you know, you know. But yeah, no, I think he was also like somewhat of a bright spot for us against Memphis.
So, I mean, Mika, with Miami coming up, without going too hard into the like, because I mean, this is very much like a vibes show.
Right.
Without going too deep into like, because the record of Miami speaks for itself. We talked about it before we got on air, but I mean, they've lost 13 of their last 14 games. The only non-loss since their win on, what was it, April 27th, against San Antonio. I guess odd fact is that both of these teams' last win came against San Antonio, so that's one for Harry if you're listening.
Interesting.
But Miami, so since April 27th, they've lost 13 of 14 games, and they have just a single draw, 2-2 against Loudoun on June 22nd. So the crazy thing is that as poor as Locomotive have been, Miami is the only team in the league that has been worse over the same stretch, and they have been worse by actually a considerable distance. I think it's pointless to say that there are must-win games for Locomotive because it's gotten to a point where basically any game that they don't win is another nail in the coffin of the season. But just in terms of pride, there literally is no result that can be acceptable but the first home win of the season, right?
Yeah. I mean, Miami ship goals. We can see goals, they ship goals. 53 goals against on the season. Crazy part is, though, they've still scored more than us. We are the lowest scoring team in the league. I think I'm right to say that. Like, both Western and Eastern Conference. So, I mean, Miami at least have some shooters, right? But, yeah, I mean, anything that isn't 3 points is really just, like, the death knell of this season, I think. I mean, this is... And it's funny because, like, who's going to be watching this other than, like, all the most sick people?
It's going to be us, a handful of folks, like a handful of the diehards, right? In eighth notch, and then John Morrissey. And that's it.
And John is the sickest of them all because he'll be like clipping the game up and being,
analyzing.
Let's dig in.
Yeah.
So yeah. This one is for the sickos for sure. Like, you gotta have a strong stomach for this game.
I mean, you talked about Miami shipping goals. They are shipping goals like they are going, one of the 2,400 vessels arriving at the port of Miami. Anyways, I was like, how much business is going through Miami? Because I almost made like a Bad Boys joke, but I decided to go with actual legitimate shipping. So Miami is tragic. The reality, I guess, of Miami, and one thing that I think we'd be remiss not to mention the fact that Antonio Nocerino is going to be in Southwest University Park, and at one point that would have felt like a very crazy thing to say out loud, and it still might be, but he does it as the manager of Miami FC, which it's weird to see a name as big as Antonio's associated with a club that is this bad.
Well, Miami is like an Italian like vanity project.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, Nocerino, I mean, he's had some career, made over 100 appearances for Palermo, Daie Aguile, but yeah, it's a weird one. Did Landon Donovan come to the swap?
I believe he did with Los Dos.
With Los Dos or with San Diego?
San Diego. Wait. Now I'm trying to think because
I feel like
COVID.
There was like there might have been a reason he didn't, because we at one point had said like that'd be wild that like Landon Donovan's in the.
Now
I don't
I'm
know.
trying to remember.
He might have done, but yeah, Nocerino. I mean, and I still remember him at Orlando City. It wasn't that long ago when he was playing in MLS.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know what kind of like resources available to him at Miami. I mean, I know they're like on paper like a rich club, right? But I don't know exactly how much is actually given to him. But can I just say like real quick, so 2 days ago, I guess Pitbull, like Mr. 305 himself, purchased the naming rights to FIU Stadium, so it's gonna be Pitbull Stadium.
That's incredible.
So Miami play in Pitbull Stadium. Lit.
What on earth? I had not heard that. How is this not like? What? How is this not all USL Twitter is talking about?
It went under the radar, I guess. But yeah, no, ESPN's reporting it, so it's gotta be real.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
It seems like, I mean, obviously it's through FIU and stuff, but like, Miami play there, so. Oh man, that's funny.
So I was going to make a comment about the fact that there is a player on Miami who I'm surprised Wilmer Cabrera has not been in for recently, or maybe he has, but Frank Lopez, who was at RGV under Wilmer as well, but he will not play a part in this match because he was one of two players sent off in Miami FC's last game against Loudoun, the 4-1 loss. He was sent off in first half stoppage time. So for a second yellow card. So he'll play no part, as will Nicholas Cardona will also not be taking part due to
thank
suspension.
Goodness. That's a good thing for us, because I think Frank Lopez has been their standout, right? As far as goal contributions. So.
Yeah, 5 goals, 3 assists for him. And Miami, definitely not the deepest team in the league. Their bench gets pretty short, so I would say in general, Lopez being out does blunt their attack quite significantly, which hopefully goes in Locomotive's favor. The players that we will definitely see, Rocco Genzano, who is I think he's like, he turned 20 in May, and he had joined from
Potenza.
Lycos or Potenza?
Looks like. Oh well, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Isn't telling me everything.
Potenza, I think, was where he actually was. like their U19s or whatever. And then Alan Gavilanes, he was playing at Greenville last year in League One, and he's actually acquitted himself quite well, despite the fact that they aren't very good. The North Plainfield, New Jersey native, and Marist College alumnus. So
got it.
Good old Marist up there in the I don't know if that technically counts as Orange County or Rockland County up there, but you know,
Marist,
New York's
isn't that Dutchess County?
Oh, it might be Dutchess County. Yeah, probably.
New York geography.
New York.
FTW.
New York stuff. So those are the couple of players to watch out for, but like I said, Frank Lopez not involved, and probably much to Wilmer's delight. Maybe he made a call down to Miami before the Loudoun game. And Frank, how about you sit this one out?
Yeah, I mean, we need all the help we can get, so I will absolutely take it. But yeah, this is just like this is what I want to know. Who in Vegas is putting money on this game? Like, either which way, for any reason. That's sick.
That is grounds for, I mean, far be it for me to judge people for what they do, but what I would say is that a bet on this game should trigger like an automatic call to some sort of gambling hotline. Where it just automatically is like, are you okay? Did you mean to click that? Like, was that on purpose? Are you placing this bet? Are you under duress? Like,
right. Blink twice if you need assistance. You know who I often forget was a very good player for Miami over several spells? Dhillon Mahrez.
Yeah, Dhillon Mahrez, and I mean one of the legends and a friend of the show. Miami FC once paid a transfer fee for Richie Ryan.
That's right. Yes,
I think it remains one of the highest transfer fees paid for like in domestic American soccer for a player between two U.S. based teams or North American based teams. I think
he's a Rolls Royce of a midfielder. So
they paid, I want to say $800,000 for his services from Ottawa Fury, perhaps at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
NASL, halcyon days of NASL when things were just flying around. Like it was nonsense. And I think at that time Ricardo Silva was making some kind of pitch to U.S. Soccer that he would invest like $4 billion in U.S. Soccer and like give them a TV deal if they implemented promotion and relegation.
He tried.
So, what a time. Well, Mika, I mean, I know we've covered a lot of ground with Locomotive, but is there anything, I don't know, is there anything we're missing? It just feels like, I know we've been gone for a long time, and it feels at once like there's been a lot that's gone on and nothing that's gone on, but is there anything else that we need to chat about before we let the good people live their lives?
No, I mean, we'll see what happens on Saturday. I guess the other thing that I wanted to kind of shout out was today was Whataburger's birthday.
True.
And it made me realize that I haven't had a single Whataburger like post-dub meal in like forever. So that was a sad realization.
So tragic. Whataburger is literally missing out on business because of Locomotive's form.
Yeah. Mountain Star keeping the waist snatched.
I will say I'm sure that Whataburger on Sunland Park, right? That's where, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one on Sunland Park definitely felt it when I moved away. Like They were like, there's something going on in the numbers. Like, is it
Just
COVID?
way less foot traffic.
Is it COVID? What's going on? Like, no, yeah, it is a shame though that there's no, I mean, obviously it's a little less Whataburger, probably good. And like at the same time, it's not great when we haven't had a reason to enjoy it. But yeah, gosh, well, happy birthday to Whataburger. And
to a real one.
I do want to say, I guess in the way of closing, like to anybody who's listening to this, because we know it's been a slog. We know that we haven't been around as much this season. We know that the season has been brutal. And I do want to say that like at the end of the day, Locomotive as an entity and as an organization, as a sporting organization, like they cannot exist without you. Right? Like you are the fans.
Facts.
You are, at the end of the day, you are what makes Locomotive what it is. And so I just want to say that, like, to anybody listening to this, thank you for giving a shit. Like, thank you for caring about the club. And I am, at the end of the day, confident that, like, the power that you have as fans will, like, move the club in the right direction. And I think that is, like, I think however long it takes to get back on stable ground and get back to where we know this club can, I do think that those days are ahead still. So it may take a while. It may take a lot of suffering on the way, but I do think that this club can get back to where it's been, competing for trophies again. So, yeah.
Well said, Phil. Well said. And I echo those sentiments 100%. I mean, at the end of the day, this is not their club. They are stewards of the club. This is our club.
Yeah.
And I know that concept can seem a little weird in the context of, you know, the country that we live in and the way soccer is set up in this country, but I truly do think that we, as fans, should think that way, that this is our club and Mountain Star Sports Group are just the stewards of it. You know, and the owners on paper, but we make it what it is as fans. And so, yeah, Phil's absolutely right. And yeah, I mean, we keep trucking. We are gluttons for punishment, and it'll continue. Yeah,
it will. Well, it's good to be back in the end. Hopefully a little bit of catharsis for anyone out there, getting a little frustration off the chest. And at the end of the day, still expectations around this game against Miami. Who knows? Maybe a little bit of there could be some catharsis on the pitch, for better or worse. And against Miami, I think the expectation just has to be that it is the first home win of the season. So we go in with, I think, with that expectation, and we can hold this team to it whichever way it goes. So, yeah. Thanks everybody. Hope you enjoy. And I guess until next time, stay loco.